don't seem to be able to inform people and give them the information so that hopefully one day we'll scrub out the obscenity of war. They work because being cheap, unlike the banks, which are amazingly expensive, 1.5 trillion, there is some level of responsibility with what you do in a library. You take care of your users, you take care of your people, you take care of your community. Shutting libraries cost a fortune, not just in terms of redundancy payments, but in damage to society. Recent report, UK gross domestic product in 2025 would be £32 billion higher if action had been taken to ensure all children were reading well by the age of 11. And this comes from a couple of bodies. One seems fairly kind of liberal and stuff, Save the Children. The other one is the Confederation for British Industry. And these are the sort of people that normally governments listen to. I would take notice of that. The notion that you take a cheapskate attitude and cut in the short term a community resource that transforms lives while damaging the future of our people is no saving, no economic sense whatsoever. Libraries fill a gap. 1 in 6 children don't read a book in a month. 4 million children do not have a book at home. The National Literacy Trust did a survey of 17,000 people in one sample. This is rather bigger than Michael Gove's infamous Premier Inn evidence. It found that a child who visits a library is twice as likely to be a fluent reader as one who does not. And that gap is important because I think in one of the digests I've seen from the Zeekout report, it actually said that contrary to the myth by some backwards Labour councillors and Tory councillors, and there's no Lib Dem councillors, they actually talk as if it is the middle classes who ride on jodhpurs, with polo, and they visit the libraries with largesse, and it isn't. It's the poor and the young and the elderly and the vulnerable that use our libraries and need them most. And that is proven by all the evidence. And if we abandon those people in an increasingly atomised society, the notion of community crumbles. They provide a lot more than books. Storytelling sessions, research, help with the internet. If you don't have a local library, how on earth do you prevent yourself being sanctioned for not undertaking job searches in this vicious anti-welfare state that we are creating in this country? Libraries serve the people who need them. And when you get a Labour council like Mayor Anderson's Liverpool going to shut 11 out of 18 libraries, that is a betrayal of Keir Hardie and the 1945 Labour government and the government of 1964, which was a Tory government that introduced the public library service. And Ed Vaizey needs to look at what his party did once upon a time in delivering reforms for the people. Libraries are popular. They get higher use satisfaction surveys than any other service except the National Health Service. Nearly half, 44%, of 8 to 16-year-olds surveyed use their public library. And when they're not used, it is the point I said to Justin. If you make it that the only time the library is open is from 11 to 11:07 on a Tuesday and every third Wednesday, no wonder people who are in work can't get to the things. Libraries keep up with technological change. Libraries used to have cuneiform, papyrus scrolls and the codex. Now we've got the codex, the e-books and the internet. But still they fight to deliver information and democracy to the people. What do I mean by democracy? By allowing working class, unemployed people, lower middle class people to have access to information, to knowledge. We can take on people from the public schools and the wealthy and say this is not 1815. This is not 1816. You can't cut us down with sabres on Peterloo. I can look you in the eye and argue into the ground, and I've done it several times with Ed Vaizey. Libraries are ill served by those given the job of superintending them. I think Justin got in incredible knots trying to defend Ed Vaizey. Ed Vaizey's on many occasions permitted councils that were going to shut over half their libraries to carry on with what they were doing without any intervention. And incidentally, the next time a Secretary of State says they are not minded to intervene, I would tell them to read more. It is a most inelegant phrase. Libraries are a statutory service. And it's ironic that even last year we still had to remind members of the LGA twice, after all the arguments, that it's a statutory service. They need to read more. They need to read their own documentation and laws. Libraries have lots of good friends amongst the public. Hundreds of thousands of people have petitioned, rallied and protested. And that's why we've got this body now. We organised 110 readings that launched National Libraries Day, 7 years ago. We have petitioned, we have demonstrated. Writers, people like Sir Michael Holroyd and Joan Bakewell and Roger McGough, and actors like David Morrissey have helped to put the pressure on councils to keep libraries open. And it's only because of this upsurge of democratic movement from below that, yes, the number of libraries closing is slowing, Sue, isn't it? The reason it's slowing is because we put massive public pressure upon them. It didn't happen because they just thought, oh, maybe we were wrong all along. Politicians think they're wrong all along when the mass of the people say, but you are wrong all along. They have few genuine friends amongst politicians. I'm glad to see the politicians here today, and they made some very good points, and they took the flak, but I have to say certain things. Local authority spending has declined by a quarter in real terms. I think it's a national scandal. It didn't need to be this way. Not only would there be people, Speak Up for Libraries has several wings. I'm on the wing that thinks the whole austerity thing is a con to move power and wealth in the direction of the wealthy and against the poor. And I'll maintain and argue that with anybody. Some people think cuts are necessary, but nobody thinks cuts are so necessary that you rip something like a third out of the public sector. That's the reality. I don't think that is conscionable. And it is not conscionable for a Prime Minister to say he'll go in the next election saying austerity is permanent. How the hell do you know when you don't know the conditions of the world economy in the future? That to me seems ideological. Vasey has not exercised his duty to superintend. Hundreds of libraries have closed or been handed over to an uncertain future with volunteers. Opening hours have been slashed, book funds have been slashed, and libraries are always the top for cuts. And Labour cuts as badly as the Tories, meekly implementing Osborne's idiotic austerity programme. The Lib Dems walk around propping up the Tories and eliminating themselves from the public politics by their slavish adherence to the Conservatives. Politicians claim credit for things they haven't done. Ed Vasey preened about the Birmingham and Liverpool libraries, even though the decisions were taken before he came to office. The law is not enough. The 1964 Museums and Public Libraries Act's provision for a comprehensive and efficient service has never been comprehensively and efficiently explained, and that should be done as a matter of urgency. And again, for Justin to say that we cannot take standards other than in one locality, I think is actually the opposite of what standards are. Standards have to be across a substantial base of different experiences, or they are not standards. He doesn't understand what a standard is on any standard explanation of a standard, right? A library needs a librarian. 12% of full-time staff have been sacked. A library without a librarian is a ruin. There is one job at the moment. We fought for years to have the poor and the working people elected as ministers. I'll tell you where you could have saved the public purse and have volunteers. When there are people who are millionaires, and actually people like George Osborne and David Cameron are extremely intelligent because they, as fetuses, were millionaires, why do they take their pay? If they think librarians can be done as volunteers, why on earth don't millionaire politicians offer their services for free? Why? It's an obvious case of volunteers. Not all countries are doing what we are doing. There are 180 new libraries in South Korea. There are hundreds of new libraries in China. There are more libraries and librarians in Japan. There are no wholesale closures in Ireland, New Zealand, France, Spain or Finland, who've had massive stress on their economies. They face cuts, but they know that if they keep the buildings open and they keep the staff, then when better economic conditions return, you can improve the bookstop, you can improve the services for the public. If you get rid of the libraries and the librarians, that process will never occur again. And that's why we have to fight tooth and nail, both for the buildings and for the status of a paid and respected and trained librarian in every library. Libraries attract a lot of expensive inquiries. How many have there been in recent decades? 10, 20, 30, 40? It's a lot. Now, the point is, the next one has got to have action and it's got to have leadership. If that doesn't come out of the Zeekout report, it would be more hot air. And I like the way that you talked about the leadership that should come out of it. And the same from Wales. Some inquiries say appropriate things. They take forever to get published. Interesting that both Zeekout and the Liverpool inquiry seem to be taking quite a long time to come out. I'm not saying any more than that. I do like the way that volunteers are not seen as the solution in the Zeekout report. That does seem to be what's coming out. If that is true, then I think great. When I saw William Zeekout talking about the need for an influx of graduates into the library profession, that's great. Give them jobs. There is no point training the librarians unless we can ensure there's a paid librarian in every branch library in the United Kingdom minimum. To have a library without a trained librarian is actually the antithesis of libraries. And the final thing I'd like to say is this. Joni Mitchell said it a long time ago, and there's never been a better phrase said about it. You don't know what you've got till it's gone. The only real friends libraries have got are as follows. Friends groups, users, staff, communities, unions, authors, illustrators. And that is the coalition that created Speak Up for Libraries. We have to build the strongest coalition here in the real big society of the people, not trusting the rich and the powerful and the elected politicians who come and go, who say they have all their lives dreamed of being the culture minister and then 3 weeks later become the home secretary, right? We want to see people who are absolutely committed. And how do I know the people in this room are committed? This coalition that we've built and sustained for 6, 7 years, we pay to come here. Yes, we're library geeks. No, we don't have a life. Yes, we will continue to fight. And we will be not the small and small-minded society that runs our political system. We will not be a political elite. We will be representatives of our communities that demand libraries for the next generation. Thanks for your attendance today. I'd like to say a big thanks to Elizabeth and Andrew and Alan and Laura and all the people who worked really hard. I buggered off to Malaysia, leaving them to it. And I think we should all give the organisers a big clap. In Liverpool, I'm going to finish with our example because it's the example of what we've got to do. In Liverpool, we stood up to Mayor Anderson. He said there is no alternative. 11 out of 18 libraries have got to close. We got 500 authors and artists to write a letter. We held 3 demonstrations and 3 lobbies. We harassed them. And you can tell when you have done a good job because they start to lie about you. They called us despicable. We are proud to be the despicables. We stopped you, Mayor Anderson. It was a U-turn. We did beat you, and we will carry on, because now he's muttering about keeping the 11 libraries open, but replacing the staff with volunteers. We will be lobbying you at the next council and the one after that, and we will not stop until we've won and created a beacon for other areas. And that's what everybody has to dedicate them to in their own areas, and that is true localism. When we fight in our locality for the universal right to read and information. Thanks very much.
I'm not even going to try and follow that. I'm just going to say thank you very much for coming. For those of you who are willing and able to come, some of us are going around tomorrow and before that, most of you will